Welcome back. The Middle East remains a region in turmoil, with Syria and Yemen once again at the forefront of international headlines. In Syria, interim President Ahmed Shara faces the daunting task of restoring order after violent clashes between loyalists of the ousted Bashar al-Assad regime and the new Islamist rulers left over 1,000 people dead, many of them civilians. Shara has vowed to track down those responsible. He blames Assad supporters and unnamed foreign powers for the current problems. Now, the second part to this is Yemen. The US president recently ordered a series of airstrikes on the Houthi-controlled capital Sana'a following renewed threats against Israeli vessels in the Red Sea. Trump's promise of overwhelming lethal force raises fresh concerns about the long-term stability of the region. To help us unpack these complex developments, we're joined by Dr. Olsi Yazigi. He has a finger on the pulse with regards to history and civilization. Thank you for joining us today. Doctor, how are you?
Fine, thank you for having me.
All right, so for over a decade, Syria has been engulfed in war, with Bashar al-Assad holding on to power despite internal and international pressure. Now, Ahmed Shara has now taken over, vowing to bring those responsible for the violence to justice. How significant is his rise, and could this signal the end of the Assad era?
Well, the Assad era ended on December 10 when the jihadi group of Ahmed al-Shara, they took over Damascus. And the taking of Damascus by the group of Ahmed al-Shara was celebrated by Israel, because for Israelis, Bashar al-Assad was one of their greatest enemy. The reason why Israel was a great enemy, Assad was a great enemy for Israel, was because Syria under Bashar al-Assad had served as a basis for the war, for the liberation of Palestine. But the British, American, and Turkish installation of Ahmed al-Shara to power has relieved Israel from the so-called Iranian danger. And what is happening now in Syria, it is a civil war between those groups which the present Syrian regime perceives as loyal to Iran and Hezbollah, who want to continue their war against Israel, while the government of Ahmed al-Shara, they want to have peace with Israel, and they don't want Syria to be used as a country against Israel in support of the Palestinians.
Right. The Syrian Democratic Forces and the government have reached a deal seen as a step toward unity, but history shows that power sharing in war-torn nations is rarely smooth. What are the challenges that Syria face in integrating Kurdish forces, and what lessons can be drawn from similar agreements elsewhere?
Since the start of the Syrian civil war in 2010 and 2011, the Americans and Israelis, they have sponsored Kurdish separatism. And in a way, Syria was a divided country. But the signing of the agreement between the Syrian Democratic Forces, which are the Kurdish forces, and the government of Damascus, the regime of Ahmed al-Shara, they want to bring some kind of unity, because for the past 14 years, the Kurds, they had run their own state. But now, with the blessing of the Americans, of course, we had the agreement, which was signed between the Kurdish forces and the government of Damascus. Part of this agreement, which was in a way negotiated by the Americans, was that the Kurds, as well as the Arab Salafi regime of Damascus, they're going to unite their forces together, and they will not allow Iranians and Iraqis and the Lebanese to use the Syrian territory as a staging ground for attacks against Israel. So in a way, what the Americans and the Turks are doing behind the scene is that they're trying to pacify Syria, to unite the Kurds and the government of Damascus in order to create some kind of stability. But this is not possible because in this moment, Syria is divided into many factions. Big parts of Syria are under Israeli control, and Israel has made sure that the new Syrian regime will have no weapons to ever think in the future to oppose it or to support the Palestinians. So, in a way, Syria is a failed state, and with the latest massacres against the Alevi Muslims and the Christians in the coastal areas of Syria, we are looking at a prolonged civil war. Moreover, we have the Druze minority, where by seeing the extremist and the Takfir ideology which the government of Damascus have, they are in no way accepting to be part of the Syrian state. So we are looking for a long and protracted civil war.
Right. But, Dr. Syria's conflict has never been just an internal struggle. Foreign powers from the US to Turkey have shaped its trajectory, funding and also supporting different factions. Now, how has external interference fueled Syria's war? And are there echoes of past regional conflicts?
Well, the major problem that Syria had with the Western powers and Turkey, which is a NATO member country, is that since its creation as a state in 1946, with the creation of Israel in 1948, until the year 2024, Syria was the only Arab country which was refusing to sign a peace treaty with Israel, and which has historically and continuously supported the Palestinian war for independence. But what happened in the Arab world, especially with the Egyptian-Israeli peace of 1978 and 79, and the Jordanian-Israeli peace of 1994, Syria, in a way, became the black sheep among the Arab countries, because it was the only country which was refusing to recognize the supremacy of Israel over Palestinians. And after the Americans toppled Saddam Hussein in 2003, and they destroyed the most important Arab nation state which was supporting the Palestinians, Syria was the last Arab state which kept its resistance for the liberation of Palestine. And since 2006, Syria joined Iran and the militias of Yemen and Iraq, and they formed the so-called Axis of Resistance, where the government of Bashar al-Assad was serving to smuggle weapons to Lebanon and to Palestinians to fight Israelis. And Western powers, they didn't want this Syria. And for this reason, they brought to power Ahmed al-Shara, who is doing the job of the Zionists.
Right. Now, turning to Yemen, Trump's airstrikes on Sana'a are the latest in a long line of U.S. military interventions in the Middle East. These actions are often justified as necessary for security, but their long-term impact is less clear. Now, how effective have such campaigns been in curbing threats, especially against groups like the Houthis?
The war against Syria, which culminated with the toppling of Bashar al-Assad, has continued even in Yemen, because we have to understand that Israel and the Zionists, they achieved major victories by ending their, or by reaching a ceasefire with Hezbollah on November 2024, and then toppling the government of Bashar al-Assad and decimating Hamas and Gaza. Now, part of the bigger picture is Yemen, Iraq, and Iran, because Syria is out of the equation. So what happens is that while the Israelis, they destroyed the Syrian government and they brought to power the Takfiris, they haven't yet been able to destroy Yemen. And in the last few days, when Israel has placed Gaza under total sanctions and they're not allowing food and electricity to enter, The Houthis in Yemen, they declared that they will put their own sanctions on Israeli shipping. For this reason, the US government made the latest bombing because they want to blackmail into submission the Yemenis, so that to force them to get out from their conflict with Israel and allow Americans and Israelis to conduct their ethnic cleansing of Gaza. But the Houthi government of Sana'a, they have pledged their loyalty to the Palestinians, and they have told to the Americans and Israelis that we will not stop for as long as you don't stop the genocide in Gaza.
All right, thank you so much, Doc, on your perspective on this Middle East crisis. That was Dr. Olsi Yazigi, Assistant Professor, Department of History from the International Islamic University in Malaysia. I'm off for a very quick break and we'll be back with more updates. This is The World on Bernama TV.